Hello? Oh, yeah. Okay. Shall we get started? Okay. Okay, let's get started. So, good afternoon to all. A very warm welcome to the AIIB Pavilion on the very first day of COP28. My name is Bebe Gu. I'm from the Green Finance Forum of 60. At GF60, we are a non-profit platform that promotes the thought leadership in green finance and also engaged in dialogues with policymakers, financial and business leaders, and scholars to elevate the role of finance for climate action and for sustainable development. So for today's event, we are really proud to be partnering with AIIB to initiate this timely discussion on blended finance. And also this event will be live streamed. So for those who are joining us from online, from all across the world, thanks for tuning in. As the world is coming together for this COP, the issue of finance is once again taking the center stage of climate negotiations for the coming 2 weeks. So how can we act together to mobilize the $1 trillion of climate finance that is in need at scale and at speed? And what are some of the innovative financing solutions that can help unlock the private finance to where the climate benefit can go hand in hand with the commercial profits? So this session will dive into the opportunities of scaling climate finance through innovative structuring models such as blended finance, while discussing some of the challenges faced, especially in the emerging market. So today we're so thrilled to be joined by 5 distinguished speakers from a real diverse background, from the leading multilateral development banks, from public policymakers, from private sector financiers, as well as non-governmental actors, to discuss how blended finance can be deployed and scaled to mobilize both public and private capital for climate objective. So without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, I would like to introduce and invite Sir Danny Alexander, Vice President, Policy and Strategy of AIIB, to give opening remarks. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Bebe, for moderating this event. And on behalf of the AIIB, let me welcome all of you to this, the very first event at the first AIIB Pavilion that we've ever had at a COP meeting. So we're really delighted to welcome all of you. Really grateful to our distinguished panel of speakers for agreeing to discuss this important topic. So AIIB is a multilateral development bank. We have 109 members from all over the world. Our corporate strategy commits us to green infrastructure and to climate finance as a major goal. Today, financing climate transition is really the first priority of our strategy. We aim for at least 50% of our financing to be climate finance by 2025. Actually, we already achieved that last year. So we're now thinking, how can we go even further? And one of the tools that we can use to go even further is the topic of today's discussion, blended finance. So blended finance, bringing together different kinds of resources, concessional resources with private sector, with NDB lending and so forth, is, we believe, a critically important instrument in order to scale up climate finance and scale up the climate transition. Blended finance has the capacity to leverage both public and private resources to address global challenges like climate change by improving the accessibility and affordability to finance climate projects. It can also help to mobilize technical assistance and capacity building alongside lending to ensure that good projects can be developed to the point where they can be financed. by deploying blended finance in a strategic way, we can mobilize private capital at a much larger scale, including through the development of innovative products and structures in markets with perceived high risks. A key part of the global discussion today, and in the G20 and here at COP and so on, is not only how can MDBs scale up their financing dramatically, but how can we do so in a way that also helps the private sector to scale up dramatically. And that's really the focus of the blended finance discussion. Understandably, though, blended finance is important for especially low and middle income economies. It's actually also needed for middle, upper middle, and even occasionally higher income economies where there are very particular challenges that need to be addressed to help deliver the climate transition. For example, accelerating the managed phase out of coal. And therefore, blended finance has been increasingly recognized by the international community, such as in the G20, as a critical instrument when especially many developing countries are facing budgetary constraints, facing challenging economic and financial conditions, as we see in the world today. So we've taken several initiatives already to try and develop blended finance further as an instrument specifically that AIB can use. Our special fund window is an instrument for donors to help support the interest rate buy down to reduce the interest rates for AIB lending for the lowest income countries. We're working on some innovative instruments for blended finance with our partners, such as, for example, the Asia Green Partnership Fund, trying to bring MDBs, philanthropic organizations, and private sector financiers or those with fiduciary responsibilities together to provide equity investments in infrastructure. If you want to know more about AIB, you can download our climate action plan. We published this in September. We have these little cards with a QR code on them. And I think the QR code is probably this one on the wall here as well. So we don't have printed copies, but we do have electronic versions. So I look forward to listening to the discussion. Thank you again to our distinguished speakers for being here. And thank you to all of you, both in the room and online, for joining this event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are certainly very excited to see more exciting initiatives that can help scale and mobilize more private capital through innovative blended finance solutions. So next, I would like to start our panel discussion, and would like to welcome all our distinguished panelists to take the stage. Yeah, and as we are setting up the stage, I'd like to do a quick round of introduction. Yeah. Yes, please. Okay, a very warm welcome to all, and so we have a really exciting panelists today, and would like to first take a few minutes to introduce all of them. So to my left-hand side is Mr. Rodrigo Salvado, who is the Director General, Operational Partnerships Department at AIIB. So Salvado manages the Operational Partnership Department and also AIIB's engagement with global and regional coordination mechanisms and partners to build relationship and mobilize additional resources for the bank's investment operations. And before joining AIIB, Rodrigo has also experience working with one of the leading philanthropy, where he was in charge of building strategic partnerships and setting up innovative financing mechanisms, including some of the blended finance partnerships. So we will be looking forward to hearing more from you. And then to Rodrigo's next is Mr. Marat Zaparo, who is CEO of Penta Green Capital. So Penta Green Capital is a debt financing partnership between Temasek and HSBC with a task to basically help financing some of the marginally bankable sustainable infrastructure for the developing Asia. And Marat brings close to 2 decades of experience, including over 15 years in infrastructure, energy, and real assets investment and financing. And before joining Pentagreen, Marat was with IFC of the World Bank and tasked with developing bankable projects across sustainable mobility, decarbonization, water, and circular economy. And then let me introduce Mr. Juan Hofmaster, Associate Vice President of Global Climate Cooperation at the Energy Defense Fund, or EDF. So Juan supports the strategy and leadership for the EDF Global Climate Cooperation team, with a focus on multilateral climate finance and adaptation issues. In this role, he helps identify strategic opportunities for EDF. Before joining EDF, Juan was also with the Green Climate Fund, where he leads engagement between the fund and the UNFCCC and manages some very important strategic relationships, such as with the multilateral funds. He also brings the depth of experience in multilateral governance and having served as the lead negotiator for developing countries for the Article 7 and 8 of the Paris Agreement. So basically have the opportunity to witness the real big moment. So a warm welcome to Juan. And then we have Mr. Endra Kurniawati, Director of the Indonesia Environment Fund, Ministry of Finance of the Indonesian government. So Nia has been involved in developing national green economy policies and regulations, and she has been in charge with public service agencies on the establishment of the Environment Fund. And Nia also leads the designing of some of the climate change policy windows under the Public Service Agency. She has experience in developing national policies also on biodiversity, conservation, and its finance, particularly across the benefit sharing over biodiversity utilization and policies on the environment management and protection plan. So we have a very exciting panel, and for today's panel, I think basically we're trying to answer this question on how we can scale up blended finance for climate solutions. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that we see, particularly for the emerging market? How are we going to overcome those challenges through innovatively structured blended finance solutions? So actually, before I get started with the first round of questions, just allow me to, just for the purpose of the audience, just allow me to maybe provide some quick facts to basically set the scene. So when we say blended finance, there's a definition from Convergence. Basically, blended finance is the use of catalytic capital from public source or from philanthropic source to increase private sector investment for the purpose of supporting sustainable development. And it is normally a structured form of financial collaborations between the public, the private, and the philanthropic actors, which many believe has the potential to unlock massive scale of private capital if used right. So some has estimated that the blended finance has the potential to result in a 10-fold increase in investment. But generally speaking, a good blended finance deal will be able to leverage a public versus private capital leverage ratio of 1:4. So actually, according to Convergence, this avenue of financing globally has already mobilized $200 billion with over 7,000 deals. However, despite of the great potential of this tool, actually the global deal or the global volume of blended finance in last year recorded has seen a significant drop, almost to a 10-year low. especially for the blended finance deal for the climate solutions, has marked a significant decrease of more than 55%. So I guess the first question I have for all the panelists here is to have your view and your take on what is the current state of blended finance since it has been first developed and been promoted. What has worked? What hasn't? And also would like to hear your view on what are some of the key strategies and priority areas that we can collaborate to work on to scale up the climate blended finance. So I'll invite Rodrigo to go first.
Very easy. We have to also, compete with the other, with the fellows here. So we have to be noisy. So thank you so much. I think it's a great topic, and again, I mean, I think that definitely has been a lot of promises on blended finance, right? I mean, I feel like we have been talking about this for, I don't know, like 10 years, but and we always are like asking the same question, which I think is great that we have here people that actually have done deals and have done things. So I can share a little bit of my perspective on this one. The first one, I think, is, a couple of lessons learned, right, from my experience doing this. I used to be at the Gates Foundation, right, doing these deals from the philanthropy side, and I always was trying to get the NDVs to do the right thing, right, from that side. And now I am the NDVs, and trying to get the philanthropists to do the right thing from this side. So it's a little bit always is a tension. The first thing for me is that blended finance is not about making bad deals look good, right? I mean, when I was at the Gates Foundation, I was kind of a lot of people coming with me just saying, well, you know what? I need grants to make a 5% project look a 10% project. That's not what blended finance should do. Blended finance is there actually to absorb risk for good deals to happen. It's not about actually inflating, the returns of risk. So that's number one. And it's important. Again, because, I mean, many people believe that, they are going to ask for the Gates Foundation to get a greater return to the investors that actually is not there. The second one is that, to me, and Danny said this before, is blended finance is not only about project finance, it's also about project preparation, right? And again, the different regions work differently, right? And again, you might have, like in Asia, a lot of pipeline. But in particular for big ticket items, that take a lot of project preparation. And in fact, if you have the project preparation, you're going to have like a lot of us having different realities, right? In my experience, getting the money for good project is not that hard, right? I mean, again, if we get the right people in place. But there is not enough pipeline at the scale level, right? We have a couple of, like, obviously, tickets of the 20 million, 50 million, 10 million, 5 million, if you go to convergence, right? But the big ticket items take a lot of work to actually put together. So the second one is, again, let's talk about blended finance. Let's go a little bit more upstream. There's more that you need to do there. And the third one, right, is we have to have better risk diversification, right? This is about like risk distribution. Blended finance to me is a group of people, with different utility functions coming together to do something in common, right? So that's about it. So my point is, if each of us don't get out of our comfort zone, we are not going to get it done. And that applies to everyone. For the philanthropies, and I'm speaking because I used to be like 10 years on doing philanthropies, we cannot go with the philanthropy cannot say, I want a deal in that particular city, in that particular niche. I mean, that will not work to actually have scale, right? So they have to get out of the comfort zone to get a little bit more like, more broadening their space and the sort of like the scope. For NDVs, right, also we need to be a little bit there, right? I don't think that the NDVs are going to be taking the first loss, but they should be a little bit pushed, right? And again, a little bit of the mezzanine side, a little bit of again, it's not natural for the NDVs to do that because usually we tend to be alongside the senior investors, but I think that we need to get a little bit more there. And then the institutional investors, right, and the private sector cannot come to us and say, I want 25%, right? I want 20%. They need to get real and say, well, probably in this one, we're going to need it 15%. So if each of us actually don't get out of the comfort zone a little bit, that is not going to happen. And my sense is that has been the friction so far, right? We have been able to do some cool stuff, and we will get that in, I think, in the second round, what are the cool stuff that are happening. But in terms of getting scale, we don't do to get in the same room and say, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing that I'm not used to do. That was a very dramatic. Hello. Is, hello. Ah, they are the other ones. Okay.
So we
Hello?
are echoing with the neighbors.
It works?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
My AIB colleague did a great job of the volume competition. I'll try and keep up in terms of the volume, but look, some great points. From my perspective, indeed, I agree that blended finance, actually, we've been talking about it for a very long time. I think 10 years, 15 years, something like this. Nevertheless, I think right now the understanding or the awareness of blended finance as a technique and as a tool to solve for certain, let's call them market failures that exist out there, the awareness that it is actually a good technique and in many situations it works, that awareness has really increased. I come from the infrastructure finance world. For most of my career, that's been my job, largely from the private sector perspective, although indeed I did spend some time with the IFC. And just reflecting on this, 10 years ago, we all heard about blended finance, but nobody paid any real attention, at least not from the commercial financier, commercial investor side. It was always some marginal type of activity that gets done perhaps for real developmental reasons, right, on a very small scale. So now awareness is much higher, and now the attention to this topic, as well evidence in this room, the attention to this topic is much higher. And indeed, we have been able to generate 3, 4, or a handful of quite successful cases of blended finance constructs that, well, to me, show that that's the right direction to take. On the other side of the coin, in terms of some of the negatives, if we can call them that, number one, and I think the convergence data that you, Baby, pointed to earlier on, that's quite illuminating and quite worrying in many ways. Because on the one hand, we all seem to know that blended finance exists. It's a tool, or maybe it's a whole set of tools. It seems to work, but yet when you look at the data, the number of deals, blended finance deals, is actually falling. And in fact, we're at COP here, we're talking about climate, quite worryingly, that climate blended finance deals, the number and the volume of US dollar blended finance that gets done, that's also falling. So what's the issue? How can this be? I think clearly still in the market and amongst all the various market actors, the understanding of various blended finance tools is very diverse and very fragmented. And which tool to use where is also, that understanding is very diverse and very fragmented. And often attention is paid at one particular tool, perhaps at the expense of another. And we all know, or the recent discovery is that the world is much more complicated than that. No one particular tool is going to address the issues, whether that's project preparation, whether that's de-risking investments or financings. All of these techniques need to exist in one somehow coherent continuum. So that's perhaps is one of the challenges. Final point I will make before I pass it over to colleagues, was very encouraging to me is that at least in one area of the market, there seems to be some consensus forming around what kind of blended finance structure might actually work to solve for situations where essentially in the investment opportunity set, there could be this risk-reward disconnect. So the investment opportunity, the project might be out there. It might be, quote-unquote, a good project. It might be a really well-prepared project. But nevertheless, it may exhibit a risk profile that is just higher than what a commercial investor or a commercial financier may accept. And what we've seen over the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years, these constructs forming that are essentially investment vehicles that use a tiered capital structure of the junior, mezzanine, and senior, using concessionary capital very smartly, in a very targeted form, to essentially de-risk commercial flows of capital into a higher risk opportunity set. We've seen a number of these. BlackRock have an investment vehicle along these lines, the Climate Finance Partnership. That's an equity investment vehicle for renewable energy in emerging markets. We have vehicles such as Climate Investor One, looking at development, capital, construction equity. The latest construct that our colleagues at FinDev Canada, together with MUFG and your former colleagues at GCF put together, Project Gaia, a debt financing vehicle with a tiered capital structure, looking to finance adaptation projects globally. So all very similar constructs, and they all have in common this tiered capital structure approach. And to me, that's very encouraging. If many independent market actors are coming to very similar conclusions on how to solve for this higher risk opportunity set, well, you know what, that's a signal that we're on the right track. So I'll pause there and over to colleagues.
Thank you. And I don't know if I'm able to match the volume, but I don't think I have as much competition now as before. So let me actually try to go even further upstream. And I think that one of the challenges why we are in this situation, it's precisely, there was a mention of the issues around capacity. And part of the big problem has been that at the level of countries designing, starting with their NDCs, we need to start thinking about this type of solutions at that point. We don't want to overcomplicate things, but we need to start thinking around how we structure the way in which countries think of their needs and how they bring them to market or they take them somewhere else. Because we cannot pretend that everything is going to necessarily work for blended finance. But precisely that's why we want to make sure that we are prioritizing those things that make sense so that we can use the public grants, use the other resources for those things that you cannot use blended finance for. So I think that we have failed at that. We have tried to sort of at times not necessarily provided the right type of capacity for countries to be able to start thinking of structuring early on. And we have not, we have also tended to overcomplicate things when we have gotten down to these discussions. To me, you know, having heard the two colleagues give their take and also your definition from on blended finance, to me it really comes down to two key things that we need to be thinking in mind. Blended finance is about impact. It's not just about sort of having high leverage ratios, it's about the impact. And here with impact, I don't mean the financial return, of course that's a dimension, but it's because we're trying to do something different. And it's about risk. It's about managing risk. It's about structuring in a way that you can make deals that otherwise wouldn't happen. But it's not just about making the deals. It's about driving that impact. I think that we're seeing progress in people, but very limited in how we think about de-risking. The potential, for example, that some of the institutions that can deploy guarantees but just simply don't, I think that requires a conversation. Why is that happening? Why are we not having some of the big players that could be crowding in capital through sort of providing the type of financial instruments that could help not doing it? And I think that's a very important conversation to have, particularly as we're about to go in the process of designing revised NDCs following the global stock take here. Let me stop there.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'm the last. From my perspective, blended finance refer to the mixed public and private finance with common investment structure and also common target. So I think each entity will contribute the finance based on the level of investment, the level ability of investment. And also I think blended finance is a condition to support non-bankable business activity to get access to financial market in meeting certain standard, such green standard that we talk about regarding the NDC, as we know, is a global and national target. So at this point, by having the blended finance, we can distribute the risk of each financial institution and the investor. So let's say if we talk about the green project or green standard, it refers to the high risk. Why? Because because we have to shifting from the conventional to the green standard. The first one, and also maybe we also need to retraining the employees and also retrofitting the infrastructure. So it will need more capital to do the green standard to meet the NDC target for this one, I think. I think that's all from our side. Thank you.
Do I need to use the mic? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for this excellent round of answers. I think we were able to collect a quite diverse view from different key actors, key stakeholders from the MDB plus philanthropy, from private project financier, also from more of the multilateral perspective, and also more specifically from a country where I heard that has been putting blended finance as one of the key initiatives since Indonesia in its G20 presidency has taken the lead to establish a global blended finance alliance. So yeah, we hear that blended finance for the past 10, 50 years has kind of slowly evolved and seems to be more mainstream as compared to 10 years ago. But I guess all of you, because of your experience, you tend to be on a more critical side. So we hear a lot of challenges and gaps to be filled, especially on how to strengthen the technical capacity to go further upstream, to do better on project preparation, to develop a pipeline of more bankable projects, but also how to strengthen country-level platform, how to provide the resources, the technical assistance that are needed for countries to take actions. So yeah, I guess for the second round, I would like to stay more on the optimism side, and then I guess this question I'd like to first address to Rodrigo and Marit, because I know that two of you have direct experience in structuring and designing blended finance. So I wonder if you can share some of the good examples, innovative examples that you have managed or developed, or you have seen that worth replicating, what has went well, and if there's any challenges or gaps that are still there from preventing it to be scaling up, it will be also good to hear.
Right. Look, I mean, I'm an optimist, right? So I think, you know, and these are things that are fun to do, right? So it's amazing. I don't know how we don't have more of these things, or without everyone is actually talking about or doing blended finance. I do think, and I agree with Marat that, you know, there are a couple of more standardized products on blended finance, right, that we should be using. But my sense, again, we are not going to scale. And I would say that as an NDB, you know, I think that the secret here is actually what the NDB should and can do, right? I think that we haven't been like even IFC and all of the advice. I mean, I don't know if anyone is here from, but I think that they can do much better, right? And I think that AIB also can do much better, and we are entering into a space. So I really think so. So a couple of things, cool things. What Marat was saying, I think that this idea of the stack funds, right? I think they are really easy actually in the structure, no rocket science, right? The idea of, who is actually getting into the capital stack to take the first loss, second loss. I really like the idea of the first, second, and third loss, kind of capital. There is one thing which is called, we did with the Gates Foundation, the Global Health Innovation Fund, which is was extremely cool. It was, the Gates Foundation got the first tranche, right? Then you have like mezzanine tranche from IFC, right? You have like a third loss from JP Morgan, and those were for our research and development. And I have to tell you, those things are not disclosed, but the amount of money the investors did make with this is outrageous, right? The point is, no one gets to these deals to lose money. That's the other thing, right? I mean, I think that, this idea that you get to blend it because you are kind of a donor and super altruistic, that's fine. But no one gets into this deal to lose money. In particular, these actually, as I said before, these are good deals in essence, right? We are not here to do bad deals. We're here to do good deals, and those are actually has the capacity to absorb more risk. They're going to have a higher reward, right? And that Global Health Innovation Fund, actually what it did was to actually do research and development. In fact, a lot of what we need in climate today is actually research and development. We need to accelerate and scale the research and development. And the blended finance can do that because the thing that you have to do is actually more risk. But if you get these technologies right, the upside is huge. So, I mean, those things that actually, I really like those things that invest on these things with early technologies that then you can have huge upside. I think those are the things that we should do. And probably things like also the individual get into that. The second thing that I really like, and I think Marat will probably relate to this, is the Waranko structure. This is Waranko is a warranty facility in Africa, right, to provide local currency lending, right? So what these guys actually do is actually to warranty deals in local currency. And I think there's so much of that needs to be done, right? Both in Africa, but also in Asia. There's a big conversation about how we actually, after individuals, we can actually do more local currency deals. And I really like that idea. Again, these are market failures, right? And then we have like the structures to actually do it, and we have like the reasons there, or the examples there actually to do it. So I would say that if we can actually pump in more money, more capital, more scale to these good, structures, I think we'll be there.
I'll also try and pick up on the level of optimism. It's as high as the level of volume, so that's really great. Look, I think likewise. I think optimistic that we have some constructs that seem to work, right? And I think these vehicles, funding vehicles with a tiered capital structure, is very, very powerful. It's been shown to work time and time again. It's been shown to work in a commercial construct, in a capital markets construct. What is a tiered capital structure? It's essentially the same thing as the capital markets bankers would know. It's a securitization. It's a collateralized loan obligation, right? Of which the market is in the trillions of dollars in the US. It works. It works to take something higher risk and then come up with a tranche structure that will enable the top tier parts of that tranche structure be lower risk. That's what it is in effect. So applying that kind of technique to the various bankability issues, higher risk types of investments and financings that we see in emerging markets in particular will be very powerful. The key challenge, and this is what we have observed, you see Pentagreen, we're a young institution, we're a debt vehicle, so we do debt financings in emerging Asia. Right now, we are funded by Temasek and HSBC, who took the bold step of funding us with just equity capital. So right now, they're first loss, second loss, third loss, every loss. There's no tiered capital structure in Pentagreen now. However, in order to scale this vehicle, that tiered capital structure needs to be put in place. With the very bottom part of the stack, that needs to come from truly concessionary sources of capital. There will be some return, but look, that kind of return at the very bottom part of the stack, no one's going to get too excited about it. It's not a commercial return, that's just clear. And the key challenge is, of course, the availability of this kind of concessionary pools in order to make these types of vehicles work. whilst there is, well, at a high level, a lot of interest, a lot of pledges, a lot of intentions being stated, to actually bring those capital pools together in any meaningful kind of volume and align those capital pools, that's very, very difficult. Each of the capital providers has a particular niche that they want to target and do not want to target the second niche. There is always the debate, why am I the concessionary capital provider making private sector rich? That seems to be a perception. Many times it's a misperception. So you need to be very careful around crafting the narrative. We're not making anybody rich. We're rebalancing the risk reward, right? So you start to get into a lot of complications around crafting what the structure, the target, the mandate, and what the narrative around it should be. That in the end, what you might end up with, you might get a construct, you might be able to put it together and close on a fund vehicle or something like this. But then you ask yourself the question, okay, we have narrowed down the mandate so much, and we've done so many gymnastics to try and articulate why it should be so and not otherwise, that ultimately, do we have then an opportunity set that we can deploy into, right? We start to lose the actual reason why we tried to put this fund together in the first place, right? And then, of course, then we go back to complaining there are no bankable deals to finance, right? So these execution complications, that's the reality of it. And in particular, on the concessionary capital side, I'm actually quite encouraged to see some of the large public and quasi-public actors really step up and look to provide those anchoring positions in the concessionary capital tranche, whether that's the likes of, again, GCF, who have been doing a lot over the recent years, who really stepped up their activity, or some of the bilateral public actors, the governments. And then, of course, the philanthropies can come along. So that's been encouraging. I think we need more of it. We just need to keep experimenting, keep trying to put various constructs together, whether that's MDB-driven constructs or private sector-driven constructs or any other market actors. And I think this way, in 12, 24 months' time, I think we'll look back and we'll have a number of these different vehicles, each looking to fulfill a certain part of the mandate and address a certain part of the problem statement.
Thanks for sharing. I have actually a quick follow-up to Rodrigo, but I wanted to also extend this question to Juan, because I know that EDF is also working on some quite innovative approach, trying to combining the carbon markets and the blended finance. So would you like to say a few quick words about that?
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I think it's important we realize that what these whole 2 weeks are going to be about at this COP is going to be very often getting to this realization that the COPs have full, have empty, as we're as part of this stock stake. And that's the whole point. I think that's where we are trying to capture lessons. No, look, I think that as we are thinking of the potential of blended finance, and we're entering in a new phase of deep decarbonization and energy transition, we need to start thinking of new solutions and of new asset classes that we haven't even tapped before for trying to deal with some of these issues. So yes, EDF with a few other partners have been working around this concept of sort of how to do energy transition in a way that the carbon markets can actually be applied for assisting in that decommissioning of coal power plants and some others. I'm not in a position to say a whole lot more right now because there will be an announcement in the next couple of days, but stay tuned.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe just a quick follow-up to Rodrigo, because you brought up some really really good example that while you're at Gates Foundation, some of the global funds that focusing on promoting global health has achieved a tremendous success. Just wondering, do you see a potential to apply those mechanisms and partnerships for climate actions, and how shall we get that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we need to enter into these structures. You need to be very clear on what you're trying to get, right? Again, there are many risks out there. There are R&D risks. There are like currency risks. There are like, misperception, asymmetry of information. And the best thing that you can do is actually to assess the risk, assess the objective, and you go. And I think in climate we have many problems, right? Many problems, but they are not all the same. So again, I mean, one of the things that we need to tackle is how we're going to accelerate R&D in climate, the new technologies. We no longer have 20 years to get this technology right? We probably have 5. We need to really shorten the cycle of R&D in climate, right? So the idea is how we're going to pump in capital into those things and how we're going to absorb those risks. So to your question, these are not multi-billion-dollar things. I mean, the fund and the Gates Foundation, they were like 100 million or 200 million. We need more of those, right? They are going to be actually tackling R&D on particular situations. And I think we have a lot of like track record on that, and we should do it. I think in general, the world doesn't know how to finance R&D. If you think about COVID-19, one of the main issues that we had is that we didn't know how the heck we were going to actually fund R&D, and we didn't do it. So only the countries that had the money to pay for R&D actually got away from it, right? But the countries that didn't have the money to pay for R&D and absorb the risk, they were at the back of the queue. And we cannot afford that to happen for climate. We cannot afford that only the countries that have the capacity to pay for the high-edge technologies are going to get that. And I think that right now, if we get another pandemic, we're going to have the same problem. And climate is another pandemic, right? People don't get it, but it's the thing. So I think that we have the thing. But then we have the other things, which is there are technologies that we know and we need to scale up. So for those, you have other type of structures. I mean, Mara was saying about like the stack structures. I think that warranty structures. And then the other point on this one is right this idea of subsidizing middle income countries. Well, that's wrong, right? There are a lot of like things that we are talking about which are wrong. Fundamentally wrong the fact that we are going to be paying rich countries to play with money. That's not the case. Indonesia, for example, is at the forefront of this. They might need some incentives to actually go and invest in these things. That then we are going to all benefit from it, right? So, but then the point is, well, I don't know if Indonesia will need money subsidizing on the project finance side. Perhaps what Indonesia now wants is more money on the upstream side to actually get the project for the investor to go out there. Right, so we need to have a conversation which is informed. I feel that people actually talk about these things in a sort of like everything and anything. And the thing that we have, like, you have practitioners there that have the capacity, and you have a structure in this and doing it, and you have actually a good problem definition, you have the 80% of the solution there. But I think to me right now, everything is not, is kind of like messy. So I think that we need to start like getting there. And to your point, yes, we should learn from other things. We should learn from health. We should learn from other like global, public goods, and then, go on and do it. But again, I'm optimistic.
Great, thank you. I'm really glad that you touch upon, I would say, climate justice, because when you say that we do need more risk-taking capital, perhaps from the philanthropic part, to be really taking risk and investing in the frontier technologies that might work, might not work. We really need that critical force to join in order to make the 1.5 degree still attainable. Yeah. Okay, so let's move to the final round of questions. So moving forward, I would really like each of you to tell me how would success look like if we were able to scale up the blended finance for climate solutions. As we speak, I think the presidency of the COP28 has clearly made climate finance and transforming climate finance a key agenda for this COP. And as we speak, I think today in the afternoon, there is a session, the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum, that is going to announce also some quite innovative blended finance structures. So would like each of you to share what is your expectation, what is your big hopes for this COP, particularly on the topic of climate finance, and what collaborative efforts and initiatives would you like to see more to come for us to achieve this goal?
So yeah, ladies first. Yeah, I think our expectation from this COP maybe refer to the Article 9 Paris Agreement that we know we agreed to mobilize private and public finance, right? So it means I think right now maybe what we have in the global level, like under UNCCC, public finance more dominant compared with the private one. But this is my perspective. Yeah, so maybe because right now most of the development country only depends on the grant scheme. But you know, when we talk about the energy transition, it is impossible we depend on the grant. We have to develop, as you already mentioned, how we can develop the finance structure. So it means we need the private finance. And then how we involve them, of course, we have to blend the finance between public and private one. And then the public finance could prepare the capacity improvement, and then when we already improve the capacity, and then the private finance can invest in the green project. I think this is the first thing that we expect from the COP. And for the second one, as we know, maybe this COP will talk about the global stock take, right? And then we know right now there is a $1 billion US commitment should be mobilized. And then, yeah, of course, we also do expect maybe after 2023, we will have more than $100 billion US to be mobilized by developed country, and also how private finance also can be increased for the proportion of the fund mobilized under the UNCCC. I think that's all from our side. Thank you.
I will leave Dubai very happy if we see the MDBs be ready to step up and be the partners to the countries in taking ownership of blended finance solutions, particularly to deal with those more complex areas where we have not seen blended finance perform as well. I'm talking anything that really sort of targets sort of the most vulnerable groups and countries, adaptation, nature-based solutions. I think success will be seeing MDBs realize the full potential that their concessional financing can bring to be able to not just have ad hoc solutions, but become a solution center around this type of ideas, working with partners, with countries as partners from the very inception of the revised NDCs following the global stocktake.
To my mind, and to me, that was a little loud. Look, if we leave this COP, or most likely if in 12 months' time we see the results of some of the discussions that happened at this COP, if we see many more multi-billion-dollar blended finance funds with their specific mandates, not trying to cover every problem out there, from mitigation to adaptation, from project preparation to financing and investment, but each with their own specific mandate. But we see more of them, and each one having sizable volume in multiples of billions of dollars. Hopefully that will be success, because that will indicate that actually we've cracked the method as to how to put these funds together, not just on paper and in theory, but actually manage to find a way to bring the capital into these funds, lock it in, so the funds can start deploying. That to me would be a very good outcome.
Great. Look, I mean, For these things, I think I'm more pragmatic and I want to be concrete. And I agree with what we had said, what have been said. I think we should have like a little very concrete targets, right? And if you actually break in this between, the project preparation, the R&D, the scaling, right? If we go, I like that idea. If we go back, if we go 1 year from now and then we look back and say, well, you know what? We have at least 2 or 3, $2 billion equity funds. And by the way, hold, because we have an announcement also in AAB, but we have to stay tuned. Right? We have a couple of those there. And then you also have, I totally agree with the idea that a 20 billion fund is not the answer. The answer is an ecosystem of 1 billion funds, right? Or 5 billion fund if you want. This idea that you have like multi-billion fund is a nightmare, right? Getting all these investors aligned on these things and doing what they want, that's actually not going to happen. So I think we have so many different problems and different regions, right? That actually you need to align them. So I really like the idea of aligning intuitive functions, to the objective. So if we actually here from now, we have again, 5 funds that actually start looking like an ecosystem, that would be fantastic. And then we can think from there in 2025 what we want, right? But let's go from the 100 million to the 1 billion, 2 or 3 of those, and then we go from there. And I totally agree that the NDVs actually step up, right? So again, more on that soon.
Great. Thanks for raising that ambition. I think we have maybe 2 more minutes to go. So before I close this panel, just wanted to quickly ask the audience if you have any burning questions. If yes, please. Oh, okay. So we have 2 questions. Oh, so, yeah. Try to be very brief, please.
Thank you for all the wonderful remarks by the speakers. I'm Can Yang from the Global Alliance of Universities on Climate and also a master's student from Tsinghua University in China. And my research covers energy transition and climate finance. So my question would be regarding the financing challenges in those sectors of less concerns. For example, the low carbon technologies in the hard-to-abate sectors and also the AFLU and the adaptation. We know that most of the climate finance flows has been directed to those areas that is more mature, for example, solar, wind, and others. But how can we address the financing challenges in these areas I just mentioned? And what is the potential of blended finance in this area? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'll try to be quick. My name is Dominique. Thank you for a fantastic panel. Appreciate the energy and the optimism. I work with investors and philanthropic organizations, including Singapore-based Atlas Capital, which is a venture capital fund focused on adaptation. So my question is, what has been useful in terms of framing adaptation investments to private investors? Can you share specific lessons or tools, or just generally what has been useful in your experience?
Yeah, here. Oh, okay.
Hi, thank you. I came from China Environmental Grantmakers Alliance. Actually, I'm a representative of the small philanthropy sector in environment. So my feeling or my observation is that our funding is very limited compared to the big banks and even government and even commercial investment. So my question, I heard a lot of discussions about the blended investment among philanthropy and banks, commercial. But my question actually, we are very small. Not every foundation like Bill Gates Foundation, right? So how those big foundations or philanthropies collaborate with the small ones, and then leverage a bunch of philanthropy sector so that can match the financial commercial investment. So yeah, thank you.
I think you can take the question. And we have one final one.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh?
Okay, thank you. I'm Almi from Indonesia. Thank you for this sharing. I think it's very great discussion. But I have a question, maybe a statement from, I forget who's the give this statement, but maybe this is the statement, investor will pumping their money if it's good infrastructure. So my question is, what are the specific or a kind criteria for monitoring funding it's appropriately to achieve target for climate solution? Or are the criteria that you're funding or you're investing appropriate to support NDC? I think that's, thank you.
Okay, great. I think for the adaptation financing framing, maybe Juan, you can take this one, and the China philanthropy, I think Rodrigo can take, and the other two, feel free to chime in, I think.
Look, the adaptation investment, I mean, certainly this is not an easy one, but one thing that we have seen that sort of where you begin to see a lot of breakthroughs is the better understanding that partners have about risk, the faster that some of the solutions begin to come about. And I'm not necessarily saying that this have to be blended finance, at least from some of more experience at EDF with work with insurance. Once you dig a little deeper, you begin to see a lot of ideas and a lot of solutions flow for adaptation. But the truth is that there's still a lot of misunderstandings about basic climate risk in value chains, and not just value chains, but just sort of future of some sectors that still need to be spelled out, and I will start there.
Okay, and Rodrigo, you want to take the...
So I have views on all of them. But anyway, so new technologies first. As I said, I think, again, I think that we are not paying enough attention to that. My sense is there are a lot of examples out there and bad experiences of what happened with COVID and pandemics that we are not applying to climate. And I think we are going to be soon in that situation where we are going to have like a gap in technology. And that thing like climate justice is actually about technology. It's actually how we're going to make sure that actually everyone has access to the same technology. And again, this is not an issue that is, I mean, we already have COVID-19, so we don't have to go back. So to your point, whether there are actually mechanisms to actually do this, of course, we have it, as we said, right? There's plenty of mechanisms there. And in R&D, you don't need huge amount of money. You need targeted money to get these things. You have to be the first one on that. So totally yes on that. On adaptation, I think, adaptation, the problem with adaptation is could be anything. And we don't have a good definition of adaptation. I think I will start with pairing this, for example, in agriculture, in water, right? There is where I see more of the niche, where I see more the problem definition much better sense. The other thing I think that we are doing, I mean, the bank, for example, was able to actually float the first adaptation bonds, right? But again, whether that's actually something, I don't know. I mean, I feel more in the intersection with other sectors that adaptation actually is something that it goes well. In terms of the smaller philanthropies, I don't think every philanthropy has to do blended finance. I don't think that's the case. They shouldn't. There's a lot of philanthropic money that has very different objectives. So I shouldn't, I mean, if you have like, for example, like I don't know, your endowment, right? But I think we could leave the blended finance for the big guys, right? But the smaller philanthropy have a lot to do. For example, adaptation, I think like a money well spent in adaptation actually to spend money in research and development on what adaptation is and what actually are the good cases, rather than going and spend the money in the sort of the big structure. So I would say also in the philanthropic capital, in the philanthropic, they have to be better, more division of labor in philanthropies. And then I think there's another one. I don't remember the last one, but probably another person should speak more.
Yeah.
Perhaps just to pick up on a couple of questions. On the philanthropy point, what to do for smaller philanthropies. I think also, of course, in addition to considering how to use the smaller amounts of money more wisely, rather than solve the huge challenge that bigger capital needs to solve. It's also interesting that now what's happening in the market, you get these new vehicles that are coming out that are aggregators of philanthropic money, right? In Singapore, we have Temasek Trust and something under Temasek Trust called the Philanthropy Asia Alliance. It's essentially a platform that brings some of the bigger philanthropies together, whether that's Bezos or etc., the very well-known ones, and then the smaller ones come alongside, right? Of course, for the smaller philanthropies, it's a question, do I want to support this cause and support it in this kind of format? And am I comfortable, in a way, delegating some of the decision-making out from my own construct? So it's a question, of course, to consider case by case, but at least it's a channel. It's a way to do something together with larger institutions, and that way also be able to have an impact. So that's something to consider. On the adaptation part, and it's a very interesting question, and I would say as a financier and as an investor, when it comes to standalone adaptation projects or initiatives, the question number one is where is the cash flow, right? And that's usually the part that is not so obvious, particularly if we don't talk about the water projects or cash flow generating projects. If we talk about restoration or protection or flood measures or things like that. On a standalone basis, the question is, where is the cash flow? If there's no cash flow, then it's not a private project, it's a public good. What we have also observed is that often these standalone adaptation projects actually start to appear within larger projects, larger businesses, even within mitigation projects. Sometimes not enough attention is paid to that. Everyone thinks, hey, it's a mitigation project. Isn't that stuff very mature? We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be channeling concessionary developmental money to it. But actually, when you look at it deeper, you will find adaptation components within a more classic mitigation asset, right? Renewable energy asset even. So those cases come up. That's quite interesting.
Okay. Nia, do you want to have the final word? Or?
Yeah, thank you. I think maybe I also would like to respond regarding the philanthropy, because based on our experience, we are Indonesia just established Indonesian Environment Fund. This is a financial institution, non-profit financial institution, and then we have some program, and then when we develop. So at this point, I think it is important for us when we will develop the blended finance. We have to define the product first. And then when we have the product that will be financed, it is easier for us to find multi sources of the fund. So for example, like that we have right now is the product regarding the community-based product. So we have some philanthropists put the money in the program, and then at the end, the impact that will be measured. And then by having the impact or promote the impact, we can find another sources of the fund to reach the bigger impact at the end. And I think regarding the adaptation as well, I think maybe if we think there is no benefit for private to invest in adaptation, but I think it's not really true. In Indonesia as well, I think right now we collaborate with the ADB. To design a financial structure, maybe a kind of thematic bond. And then it will be good as well how we can combine the mitigation and adaptation in one product. And then, of course, maybe for the adaptation, we can focus on the infrastructure finance, something like that, and then other can come to other aspect of the green project. I think that's all from our side. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, okay, thank you everyone for sharing. For me, it has been extremely engaging and inspiring panel. I've learned a lot from you. And also I've taken a lot of optimism and enthusiasm from you. So we were able to cover a lot of pertinent issues. The issue about having better technical structuring of the deals, of enhancing technical capabilities, of raising the MDB ambitions, about the need for supporting adaptation and nature-based solutions, financing through blended finance, improve the standards. But perhaps for me, the the one keyword that sticks around with me is ecosystem is the one that you brought up. How are we able to come together from different stakeholders, from different perspectives, but towards the same goal? I hope that this panel discussion helps us move towards building that ecosystem. So please join me in thanking all the panelists for their excellent sharing. So thank you so much. Yeah, and also thank you for all for staying here for the conversation. And just a quick note that we have prepared a little souvenir for you on the chair. This is coffee cup made up with 30% of used coffee powder. So drink more coffee and reduce the impact. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.